Okay, welcome everybody to our part three of our Navigating Crisis Together series. My name is Yaakov Lazar, Kol Neshamot, and I'm here tonight with Avigail Gimpel, who has cordially and graciously given up of her very little time to join us here this evening to give us a hand. Let me tell you a little bit about Kol Neshamot. Kol Neshamot works with families of children who have struggling with anxiety, depression, and unfortunately, as much as self-harm and suicidal thoughts. We work with families to give them some direction and guidance of how to help their child through their struggling times. Our co-host today, unfortunately, is not here with us tonight, but Epic Families, who has graciously co-hosted with us tonight in conjunction with us. They deal with the children, the mentor, and the families of children who are struggling in school, Olim especially. They also have right now, during the time of war, they have opened up a hotline, and I will put their information in the chat area. You can call them if you or if a child of yours is struggling due to the war situation. You can give them a call. They have some therapists on staff and ready to help as well to help you through these struggling moments. Avigail is not just an ADHD coach, and she's a mother, of course. And with all her credentials that she has, she's also been able to put this on hold for now, and helping in the war efforts in many different ways. So this really has been Abigail, thank you so much for taking out of your time and joining us here this evening. I'm going to put over the floor to you and let you go with that. If anybody has any questions throughout the entire event, entire evening, excuse me, please place it in the Q&A that is being watched and followed. So if you have any questions, we will bring them up. Abigail, thank you again for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. So first I want to begin by thanking our hosts, Yaakov and Shelly Lazar of Kol Neshamot, old friends, and doing absolutely incredible work in our community. So I am personally very, very grateful to Kol Neshamot and to this powerhouse couple. And of course, to the work that the Epic is doing, and Yasher Koach to all of you. So I would like to spend a couple of minutes, well, as long as it takes, to discuss with you how we can help our preteens, our teenagers, our elementary school kids get through this time period without developing PTSD. A little bit of my background, so you understand how I come to this topic altogether. I'm a teacher, special education teacher. My focus is ADHD. I've actually written 2 books on the subject, and a lot of the research I've done is on anxiety and stress and how that affects kids' behavior, because a lot of the underlying source of ADHD symptoms often is coming from anxiety and stress. That's one of the reasons kids will have these symptoms, as well as trauma. So therefore, this is a subject that I've been working with my own clients for many, many years, with my students. So I'd like to be able to share that with you in these very, very difficult times. I also would like to mention that I know my son right now is in Gaza, and there are many, many other parents whose children are right now, or husbands, brothers are in Gaza. So before we even begin, I'd like to just say a tefillah to Hashem that I know that you're all joining me in, that our Chayalim should be able to go in and do what they need to do and come home safely without PTSD, and be able to bring home our kidnapped brothers and sisters. And Hashem should just bring the Yeshua and bring us to the next stage of the Mashiach. And also wishing a tremendous amount of success and bracha to our brothers and sisters that are now converging on Washington, D.C., I'm so proud of all of them for getting out there and being a tremendous Kiddush Hashem to the entire world. We're an awesome, awesome nation. We absolutely rock, and I love us all. Okay, now on to our topic. I wanted to start with a quick story, a little bit heavy, but just to frame our conversation today. So there are a couple of you who know that when the war broke out, my husband and I volunteered to do work for the Chaver Kadisha, working along with Zaka, in order to bring the bodies, prepare the bodies of our murdered people to burial. It was very, very challenging, very difficult work, and Baruch Hashem, we were able to participate in that tremendous mitzvah. The reason I'm bringing it up is because it's a real pressure cooker. You know, we were in Rishon LeZion, and everyone's working shoulder to shoulder as fast as they can, and there are missiles dropping while we're doing the work. We're running to the mamad every 15 seconds and trying to do work that we never could have imagined we would ever have to face, and do it in the most calm and present attitude as possible. So, but in between, there were these little coffee breaks where we'd get to talk to each other, and we'd ask each other just normal questions like, what do you do in real life? What did you do before the war, which had started a week before? And I would share with people, oh, so I work with ADHD, and I'm an author, and I have a private practice, teach in college. And every single person that was in that building said to me, oh, I have ADHD. And I'm like, I know. So how did I know that every single person there had ADHD? It's interesting because I shared that with somebody else, and she said that there had been a study done in Brooklyn on first responders, on Hatzalah people, and it turned out that about 80% of them had been diagnosed with ADHD. The reason this is relevant to our class, as Yaakov is smiling about it, the reason this is relevant to our topic is because we often feel like our children are, especially the children who in general struggle more or are more sensitive or have behavioral problems to begin with, we're often much more worried about them. But when we give them, this was something that I learned in a tremendous way during that week, was when we give those children the opportunity to volunteer, to get involved, and those kids that are climbing up the trees and climbing over fences, and we can't control them in regular times. I don't think we should be controlling them. They're so awesome, but they're the ones that are making us a little crazy with their energy. Those are also the ones that in times of tragedy or in times where somebody is required to step up to the plate without fear and do what's required for Am Yisrael, they're the ones who do it. So the first message that I really wanted to really discuss with you is the way to help our children prevent the PTSD is by getting them involved. There are so, and when we think about what PTSD is, it's a person kind of being caught like a deer in the headlights, like they're trapped in this panic. There's a danger coming at them and they cannot respond. So the cortisol response hits. They have this tremendous rise of cortisol. There's the fight, flight, freeze mechanism, but they cannot respond. There's nothing they can do in order to save themselves from the danger. And that's why it ends up getting trapped inside of us. And only later on do we attempt to process it, and it comes out very often in destructive ways. So when we give our children, and ourselves, by the way, the opportunity to step up to the plate and do something, and we'll talk about different things that the children can do in a few minutes, but I wanted to just begin with that. And someone was saying to me the other day, well, it's so amazing that you're getting involved and helping out the community throughout the war. And I said, it's actually, for me, it's a survival mechanism. I know that if I'm keeping myself busy, getting involved, seeing how the people in the community are doing, and doing what I can do according to my abilities, that's going to help me be able to get through this very challenging time in a healthy way. So we're going to come back to that in a little while, but I wanted to just place that in front of you, and then let's get to the structure of what I wanted to talk about. The first part I wanted to talk to you about was communication. How can you at home communicate with your children in a way that really protects them from what's happening, and it's not about lying to them or not letting them know what's going on. We're going to go through a couple of things of how we can help the children with that. We're also going to be talking about the structure, how to keep the children structured so that they can, again, protect themselves and their emotions. We're going to talk about technology, what role that's playing, and it's playing way too much of a role right now, as well as sleep and safety. So let's get into a couple of these topics so that we can get some good work done this evening. Okay, now in terms of communication, this is for me a very, very important point. And it's something that we all have to guard ourselves from, including myself. And that is that we cannot use our children as therapists. We have a lot going on for ourselves. We are stressed. Like I said, my kids in Aza, a lot of us have neighbors and friends that are in very, very dangerous places. We're all worried about what's going on. A lot of us are in communities that are in direct line of missile fire. So we are in a panic because we don't even know how to protect our own children right now. So for us, and we need to get help for that, by the way. We do need to help ourselves. So the first thing we need to know is that when we're talking to our children about what's going on, and we must talk to them about what's going on, it's not for us to unload on them how we're feeling. We're going to talk about our feelings, and we're going to share our feelings with our children, but only as permission for them to be able to share themselves. So I might say, I'm also feeling afraid, or of course, I'm worried about Gabriel. I'm wondering what he's doing. But I will say that in order to invite conversation from my child so that they know that I'm vulnerable too, and that I'm giving them permission to be afraid, because even adults get afraid. But I'm not going to dump on them the stress I have, and the fact that I didn't sleep last night, and the fact that I'm shaking, and that I'm distracted all the time. And to get into all of those deep feelings with my children, I need to speak to my spouse, speak to friends, get together with friends. That's really good for us. We need to find ways to discuss things amongst each other, but never with our kids as our therapists. Now we are going to share the emotions, and it's only going to be sharing so that it's an invitation to our children to speak. We also have to make sure that we're setting up open time, open, available, unstructured time. I personally like that, and I found since the war began that Friday night meal lands up being a therapy session. And I'm sure that I'm not the only household that's in. As a matter of fact, we've had guests over since the war began. I honestly never know how I managed to get the food cooked for Shabbos. Like, isn't it hard to prepare for Shabbos during a war? I don't know. I'm finding it very difficult, but it always lands up getting done. And we do have guests, and we find that the guests also are unloading at the Shabbos meal. We have to be very careful about the way we're unloading, but the point of the Shabbos meal is this open, unstructured time where the kids know that they can say whatever they want, and it'll be received and will be available to listen to them. Another thing that we actually added to our home, which it's not great for the waistline, but is excellent for a therapeutic experience. We call it ice cream therapy, and God bless my husband. He is always restocking the freezer with ice cream. So like I said, not great for the diet, but I think we're all going to be a tiny bit heavier by the time this is over. And it gives the kids, I'll take out a pint of ice cream and stick a spoon in it. And the kids will sit around, and everyone will grab a spoon, and that's not normal life. And they know it's not normal life. And they know that we're kind of having a little bit of ice cream because our nerves are a little bit frayed right now. But because we're all sitting and we're all munching on some ice cream, I like the crunches in the ice cream, you understand? And so therefore, that opens up the space and the time for us to just talk. Now, I'm not breaking down at that point. If I need to break down, I can go to my bedroom It's okay for our children to see us cry every once in a while. This morning, I'm finding shul to be the best place to cry for some reason, which is a tiny bit embarrassing because like the entire neighborhood gets to see and it's not really embarrassing because it's not about breaking down. I see it more as like the spigot opening. We have a lot trapped inside of us, and tears are very, very good for us. They wash away negative emotions. So I'm very into the tears, and certainly we shouldn't hold back on that. But it's the sobbing in front of the children, which would be very difficult for them to handle. But having a couple of tears while you're listening to their stress is just fine, and it's normal. And again, it gives them permission to have their own feelings and their own emotions. So make that time with your family and make sure that you're fully available and your phone is parked somewhere, not in front of you. And that's hard for us right now also, by the way, because every one of us is busy communicating with people that want to know if we're okay. We want to know if other people are okay. A lot of us are involved in chesed projects, and that requires hundreds of WhatsApps a day. But when we have our ice cream therapy time, or whatever you want to have salad therapy, it's not as good. I'm telling you in advance. But if you want to do that, then you have to put your phone aside and just be fully focused on your children. Another point here is that you want to invite any question, meaning there is no question that's off the table. Now, that is a rule for all of parenting for all the years. There's, as your kids go through different stages of life, they're going to have different questions about everything. And we would rather them ask us than ask the internet, because Lord knows they're going to find themselves if they consult with the internet about their curiosities. But specifically here, our kids are going to be exposed to gruesome information, and they're going to hear a lot of words flying around like mutilation and rape and murder and decapitation and words that usually they're not used to hearing. And obviously we're not saying those words. We're definitely not exposing the kids to those kind of details, but they're going to come home with those details and they're going to want to understand it. And they feel that we do not tolerate that kind of talk in our house, or we don't want anybody to be uncomfortable, and therefore we're not going to use those words at home. We're shutting them down and we're making their question feel uncomfortable for them. So for example, when my husband and I were doing the Chevra Kadisha work, so we were exposed to horrific scenes, obviously, of people that were really terribly mutilated before they were murdered. We didn't share the details with our children at all. We did tell them it was difficult. We answered their questions, and they did ask difficult questions, but we were available to answer their questions without giving specific gory details, because those stories stay with our children forever, and it's very hard to wash out, and it's not worth it. And I have not, even though I've been exposed to actual bodies that were in very bad condition, I have definitely not been watching anything on the internet and not really listening to the stories, because I don't need it in my head to then have to control myself for not sharing it to my children. And we also can't get it out of our heads. So we're not going to win this war by watching the news anyway. And we're certainly not going to win the war by having as much gruesome information shoved into our heads as possible. So less is better here, but answer every single question and allow for all curiosity. Also, our kids are going to have some strange or panicked, it's not strange, it's actually completely normal responses to an abnormal situation. They're going to have panicked responses that will make us nervous. And I'll give you an example. I don't even remember how many years ago this was already, but when the Fogel family was murdered, and every one of us remembers that horrifying event, it hit close to home only because the structure of our family was literally exactly like the structure of the Fogel family, down to the ages of the parents and the ages of my children. And obviously the children and us, everyone, all of Am Yisrael was very, very shaken by that experience. So I was I was changing my kids' sheets a couple of days after the massacre, and one of my sons, who's the one in Gaza right now, he's a real fighter. You hear from the story. He had a knife under his pillow, and like a sharp knife, not a regular little knife. And I changed the linen and I put the knife back under his pillow. And when he came home from school, I said, "Hey, listen, you know, I saw that you have the knife under your pillow. Do you want to talk about it?" And he said, "Yeah, well, you know, there were a few boys in the room, and they were all killed. And there was no one to protect the little brothers. He slept in a room with his two younger brothers at the time. And he said there was no one to protect the two little ones from these animals. And I just want to make sure that I'll be able to protect my brothers if anyone comes into our bedroom." And I said, "Okay, I hear what you're saying. And if you need to keep that knife under your pillow for as long as you need to keep it under your pillow, that's fine. Make sure it stays under your pillow and you don't take it out. But if that's what you need right now, then and that's going to help." And what my understanding was, that that's what's going to help him get through this traumatic experience and help him fall asleep at night and give him the sense that he's empowered. Again, like we talked about at the beginning, the PTSD really sets in when you're not empowered, when you feel like there's literally nothing you can do to protect yourself, to respond. And therefore, those kind of experiences where your kids might be a little bit more interested in weapons, obviously that it needs to be done safely. I saw a group of kids walking down the street this Shabbos, and a couple of them had teenagers. A couple of them had BB guns strapped to their leg. And I said, okay, you know, it's good that the parents allowed these kids to have that kind of a sense that maybe they could also be protecting themselves or protecting the people around them. You have to talk to your kids about safety, but don't panic about them wanting to take matters into their own hands. Just discuss it with them in a way that they could understand how serious it is to have a knife or a BB gun, but that you understand that this is something that they can use right now to feel safer. In addition, kids will also, a lot of our kids are having fear responses where they'll want to sleep in our bedroom, or they'll get scared of leaving the house. I was speaking to a bunch of parents of clients who were saying their kids were terrified to leave the front door of their house, which again is a completely understandable and adaptive response to the actual situation that's around us. Like, your kid's not having a nervous breakdown and your kid is not overreacting to a situation. Your kid's reacting in a completely normal, healthy way. But the question is, how do you respond to that kind of fear? So there's a couple of ways to do it. And you certainly could get advice from a therapist or from close friends on how to handle that. But what I've seen to work well is, first of all, to allow the child at the beginning. Let's say the child needs to sleep in your room. So for a night or two, allow that and say, we're here for you. It is a scary time, and good for you for paying attention and knowing what you need right now to feel safe. And speaking in those empowered ways, you're making a choice to feel safer. You're aware of how you're feeling, letting the child know that they're going through a process, that this is not something that's going to be fossilized. Because a lot of times the kids will start sleeping in the parents' room, and that will add to the fear. Okay, so I could only sleep in my parents' room because that's the only place I'm safe. If your language is a language of choice and a language of being self-protective and wanting to go through a process that you're going to get to the other end of, that's very healthy language. And using that, as well as then slowly easing your child away from it, but not by kicking them out of the bedroom, but rather, okay, let's do a couple of hours in your own bedroom. Maybe you can come back in the middle of the night. We're slowly going to get used to your bedroom. How can we help you make your bedroom feel more safe? So one little girl, she said her bedroom was was the mamad, was the bomb shelter, and she felt like she was terrified of everyone rushing in the middle of the night, and her not being able, somehow she felt responsible for having a flashlight and having everything prepared in the mamad. Somehow that became, in her mind, her job. So speaking it through, how could we make your room more careful? Reassuring the child that that's not their job, that parents are supposed to do that, and they don't have to protect the family. That's what the parents are going to do. So working through slowly getting your child back into a regular routine so they don't get trapped in fear and in panic. So walking with them to the park and discussing with them, okay, what would we do if there was a siren? Where would we go? You walk it through with them. Okay, so since we're in a very nice neighborhood where we have a lot of nice friends, we can, or people we don't know, but they're all people that would like us to be safe. So can we practice running into any building or running into any house and knocking on a door? And my guess is anybody would let us in. What, do you want to try that? And going through that with your child, or discussing going into a stairwell, or discussing different ways to make to break the fear cycle and allow your child to slowly ease back into more adaptive behavior. So that is something that we do together, but we don't want to tolerate these fear responses for too long, but never in a punitive way, and never, God forbid, in a shameful way. Come on, you're already 12 years old. You don't want to be sleeping in our bedroom anymore. Obviously, we're not doing that, but we are very much being with our child, linking arms, giving them a lot of support and believing in them that they can get out of this fear response with our help. So that's, and finally, okay. The point is that we are constantly and always focusing on working with our child, not ever sending them out alone. This is not a time where we want anyone to feel like they have to manage alone, but we definitely want to make sure that they don't get stuck in challenging responses. In terms, I want to go back to volunteering for just another minute, because I started with that and I want to just come back to it. So there are a lot of volunteer activities, and my clients have been calling me and asking, because the school day has gotten a little wacky. I don't know if you've noticed. Somehow after 1:30, it gets very dangerous. So we have to have the kids home for maximum amount of time. This literally is going to be the least educated generation since school became mandatory. I actually think they're going to be the most awesome generation, because they're going to be the first generation that can free think and think out of the box and problem solve, because they're not being told to memorize things all the time. But I digress here. I am excited about this generation. So what I'd like to say is that we definitely want them, because they have all this time on their hands, and the natural go-to is going to be their screens. We definitely do not want that to be the default. And we'll talk about screens in just a minute, but let's talk about what they could be doing in the neighborhood. So there are a lot of families. I know in our neighborhood, we have a lot of families where the husband is away on miluim. I don't know if it's the same in every neighborhood, but there are endless babysitter opportunities there. And the kids really feel very, very fulfilled going to help a family where the mother's overwhelmed because she's alone with children. There's also endless opportunity right now to help out on farms. And for us to go with our children once a week, twice a week for a couple of hours after school and go and help with the harvest is not only incredible for them in terms of being outdoors, and just being outdoors calms our children, calms ourselves. So that's a great thing to do. We also rely very heavily on, here I'm from Gush Etzion, so we don't have any Arab labor right now. I know that in the bigger cities, that's not the case, but there's also street cleaning, and there's also cookie baking, and there's also just writing letters for the Chayalim. And I asked my son about this. I asked him if the letters are really meaningful to them, or if they just like, want to make all the little boys and girls that wrote letters feel good, like, are they doing a chesed for the kids who wrote the letters? And my son, who's, he's a giver, like he wouldn't, he's not a touchy-feely kind of guy. He said, no, we actually love the letters. So you can pass that on to your children. They love the letters. But the main message here is that everyone has a different ability, everyone. And if you look at your child's ability and your own ability, and you tap into that and you say, okay, so I'm great at organizing. Where can I do organizing? Okay, so I can help organize, let's say, shipments of equipment that are being delivered from the United States and other countries. So my child could make piles of socks and piles of thermal underwear, and that could be their organizing. My kid loves to color, loves to bake, loves children, likes to clean. There are children who like to clean. It's a rare breed, but they exist. And those kids could also help out in people's homes. There are even kids that have gone to hospitals to help clean because suddenly there's a shortage of staff. But if you and your children can together discuss things that they can contribute with, organizing Afrashat Chala. We had a big Afrashat Chala here in my neighborhood, and I got my girls involved, and they led the Afrashat Chala. They were unbelievable. So if you give them these leadership opportunities and you allow them to shine in the area that they're good at, they are going to absolutely amaze themselves and you. And this will give them a sense of purpose, meaning, and calm, and really save the day. So please consider what kind of volunteer activities your kids can do. The next topic I wanted to mention is structure. Because it's less school, and because we are busy with weird things that we used to not be busy with. At least I am. I know, like, I used to have a day job, and now I do strange things like order ceramic vests for soldiers. So like everything's kind of gotten upside down. We can't let everything's kind of gotten upside down affect our children. Now it could affect a little bit. We never are trying to get to perfect. We're trying to get to good enough. But that means that on days that the kids don't have school, we want to have a wake up time. We want to have a routine. We do want to have a dinner time. Don't ask my kids how many times this week I made them dinner. That would not be nice of you. But we overall, in general, would like to have some kind of structure around meals. And this is particularly important because our kids are eating a lot of junk because that's easier. And we don't have the emotional or physical bandwidth to be making the fabulous meals we used to make. So our kids are reaching for what we call Shabbos cereal and all sorts of other junk. And that's also going to spike their sugar levels and make them more stressed than usual. So if there is some way to not only have some structure in the day, meaning sticking to a wake up time and a bedtime that's reasonable, so they get a good amount of sleep. The less sleep we have, the more stressed we are. Everybody knows that. So therefore, having a really being makbid on the kids getting to have a decent night of sleep and going to bed at the same, close enough to the same time every night will be very, very helpful to them. We also want to have, in terms of meals, that they should have some fruit, some vegetables, less sugar, because that will also save them from more distress on their bodies and on their brains and on their emotions. So less sugar spikes and more stability there as well. We also, let's talk a little bit about technology. So in real life, I spent a lot of time in my book talking about screen time, technology. A lot of us are addicted to screens. A lot of our kids are addicted to screens. It's an absolute disaster. But at times, in addition, what we're looking at is kids getting onto playing a lot of games on their screens. Games overall, even in peacetime, cause major cortisol spikes. That's why our kids get very aggressive after they play games. They completely lose track of time. They seem bleary-eyed and irrational. That's exactly what happens when they are playing games. And if they're also games and also like doing a lot of shorts and TikTok kind of stuff, all of that is going to make them stressed and anxious, just regular, even without actual real anxious things going on around them. So those are things that, first of all, I am a big believer in not allowing games. That, like, if your kid has a device, that there should be either 0 games or very, very minimal games. Besides for that, kids should not be on their phones or on their screens all day. There are ways to control the amount of hours that they're on their screens. I use a program called Custodio. If anyone's interested, I'll send that to Yaakov to put up afterwards. And it's a great program where you can actually control the amount of time that your kid is on a certain app. Let's say on YouTube. I don't want my kids on YouTube at all, but maybe that's unreasonable to ask of kids nowadays. I don't know. We all get to decide that. But let's say I want to put a cap at an hour, or I want that phone to be shut off at 9 o'clock at night so my kid could clear their brain before they get to sleep. So those are things that I can do. I can block out times where the phone doesn't work, except for telephone calls. It never shuts off telephone calls, which is good. So it turns it into a Nokia for the times you're shutting down the screens. And that also, what's good about that is that you don't go head to head with your child. The screen shuts off, it's over. You don't have to take the screen away. You don't have to shut the screen down. You don't have to negotiate. It's done. You're letting them know in advance that you're doing it, but especially at a time where lots of stress and anxiety is being trapped in our kids' bodies, we do not want to shoot that through the roof by adding more stress and anxiety. In addition to that, we really have to make sure that our kids are not watching gory, horrible things about this war. I can't state that clearly enough. You all know it. I don't have to even say it. But we have to put our foot down here, because sometimes parents will say, what can I do? It's the kid's phone, or I can't possibly shut off this or that. Yes, you can. And just like we do not leave the liquor cabinet wide open for our children to drink whatever they want and have their own little l'chaims all the time, we also need to be able to say that is not permitted. So TikTok, for example, at a time like this, when there are going to be horrifying clips of, God forbid, our people being tortured or murdered, we have to say no. There has to be a hard no to that, because your children and us as adults will not recover from seeing those kinds of images. My niece Michali Kaplan, who spoke for Kol Neshamot, was it 2 Saturday nights ago? That was like a nachat fest for me. Oh my God, amazing event. She's such a good speaker. Love that woman. So she is involved in a project where they are gathering clips of very inspirational things that are happening during the war, how people are helping each other, the Achdut of Jews, the miracles that have been happening, and there are miracles everywhere. And those are things that we might want to share with our children, not to make it all about, wow, this is such a special time. It's not a special time. It's a scary time. It's a time of building your faith and of being together and of davening. But bringing them, if we're going to be on a screen, at least be looking at the things that give us inspiration and strength, and completely cutting out and avoiding things that will, God forbid, cause us anxiety and destroy our neshama for a very, very, very long time. In addition to that, and this is something that I've really been doing for myself a lot, is exercise. I find that I wake up in the morning with anxiety in the pit of my stomach. There's a lot going on, a lot to be worried about. And getting out to the gym and getting a solid workout in. I guess it's to balance out the ice cream therapy, maybe. But it's incredibly relaxing. And while we are going through this time with healthy, positive communication and giving that time for our children to speak and being supportive of them and helping them volunteer, it's also good to just have a time where you're also helping them let off some steam with exercise. The best kind of exercise, of course, is outdoors. So go with it. Somehow we feel like a lot of us are feeling like, we shouldn't be being too silly or playing or laughing too much. There's so many terrible things going on. I would say the exact opposite. The way we Jews are still around, I think, might be because of our sense of humor, and might be because of the fact that we're able to laugh in the face of trauma and horror. So getting out with your kids to the park and racing with them and exercising with them, jogging with them, going on a small hike. I know around Beit Shemesh there's beautiful, beautiful hikes. And now the rain is starting, hopefully not too much rain because we need to get those tanks out of Gaza. There's my stress speaking. But we definitely going on hikes in the afternoon with the kids is an excellent idea. And I can't recommend it enough. And if you can do that daily, even for 15 minutes, get out of the house, breathe some fresh air, breathe with your children. It'll do you all so well. And leave your phones at home when you're doing it. I've been also walking with my husband in the mornings as much as we can, and leaving our phones at home, taking our guns with us and leaving our phones at home. Perfect combination. And we do come back feeling a whole lot better. The final thing that I would like to just mention before I invite you all to ask some questions is in terms of safety, that we do want to talk to our children about being safe, about being prepared. So in my case, my husband and I both carry guns, and that is something that makes our children feel safer, knowing that we have that kind of security. And my 18-year-old son was helping people prepare these pieces of wood. He's very handy. So there we have it. His volunteer work was being incredibly handy, cutting out these pieces of wood, making the hole in it, and donating that in the neighborhood. So all the other families and their little children could feel like, okay, if God forbid there is an infiltration, and that's going through every one of our kids' minds, at least we know that we can lock ourselves into the bomb shelter, and that we'll be completely locked in. So that's a good thing to have, to discuss that, to hear from your children what's making them afraid, and to address it in a real way, not saying, oh no, that can't happen in our neighborhood. That's not our worry. There are no Arabs around here, so don't worry about that, Shafala. Don't do that. Address it, discuss it, and respond to it in a way that makes sense to your children and to you. And in addition to that, hopefully most of us have a mamad, a bomb shelter close to our house, something that, or in our house, hopefully. Make that place welcoming. Have water bottles in there, have some snacks in there, put a carpet down in there, make it comfortable, and hang out in it as a regular room if it's not already a regular room. And if it's someone's bedroom, don't hang out in it too much because that'll be annoying for that person. But make that mamad feel good for your family, so that your children feel like they have a place to go that they like going to. It's not a scary place to go, and that everyone as a family could feel comfortable there. So I'm going to take a break and listen to what you would like to either add to the conversation or ask about.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions for you. Something that you said before, maybe that'll help start getting the questions going. You were discussing about talking to your children, whether over ice cream or whether over a meal, or trying to get some time for nice talking sessions to go on. What do you do when you have a child, especially in that your preteen years, that absolutely refuses to allow anyone to talk about anything relating to the war unless they bring it up?
Okay. So
I mean, that could be all ages. That's really a question for all ages.
I think it is,
Especially,
yeah.
I think, but I think it's going to be a lot of the preteens will just, might shut down. They just don't want to hear it because I'm a gathering because they're afraid. Probably
Sure.
the biggest thing. And that fear of just having that conversation, it might just be too much for them.
So that would be in the category of what we talked about a child having a fear response that's landing up kind of getting stuck inside of them because we're already over a month into the war. And when you're refusing to address any topics about the war, then that becomes like this need to sleep in your parents' room or not leave your bedroom or not leave your house. And that is something that we obviously we want to help our child get past that. So what I would do first of all is start with the comfort food gathering. Could be oatmeal, that's fine. A lot of maple syrup. And you would start that, and you might want to start with just saying, I have a very inspirational story, something very nice that I heard, or a really great video that was sent. Would you like to hear something nice, something that's meaningful? Start with something gentle, something that is inviting them to say, we can talk about the situation. We don't have to talk about the hard stuff right now, but take a week, take 2 weeks to allow for the nisim, to allow for the amazing, wow, as Khayal came home today, and this is a video of him walking in and surprising his mother. I love those videos, and they make me cry every single time. So allowing for something small and connecting it with, we're sitting together right now and we're eating something yummy and we don't have our phones and we're totally focused. And it doesn't have to be a conversation about the war. It could be something very small and inspiring, and la'at, slowly, you want to build up from there to allow for things that are a little more challenging, because that's the reality of our time. Obviously, if it's a super sensitive child anyway, we don't want to expose them to too much, but getting stuck in, I can't listen to anything at a time where this is our reality, is not going to be good for your child long term.
Okay. When we're talking about trying to get them out to go volunteer, for the child that is too afraid to leave the house, the child that's like, I can't go anywhere, I can't walk anywhere, um, whatever their reasons are that they're too afraid to get out of the house.
Yeah,
And they're, and it's just discussion of volunteering or getting out of the house, their anxiety levels just jump.
sure.
Like, a child already has high anxiety. A
Right.
child who's already dealing with, one of the things that here, the age that we're dealing with somewhere that, 9 to 14 on the main scale, but even teenagers as well, in a sense, they lived through COVID.
Poor kids.
Right.
Yes.
So these kids already lost 2 years or so of social skills.
Right.
So that they're very, that they're only, many of them, their means of communication, especially the pre-teen, early teen years, their main form of communication is texting or WhatsApp. That's how they communicate, because they lost a lot of that social skill aspect of things. Um, so how do you deal with a kid who's just not going to get out of the house to volunteer, to be proactive in something, to get their mind in a positive way?
So I would start with very gentle exposure therapy, meaning you start the volunteering with baking inside the house. And then you, as a parent and child, might go and help someone in your building. Something like very, very slowly. And again, with the social thing also, you're baking something in your house, you're writing letters in your house, and you're inviting one friend over to do that with you. So you're slowly reintroducing your child to a more normal way of relating to a more healthy way. Like I keep saying, their response is normal for an abnormal situation, but a more healthy response that'll help them not get stuck in PTSD would be okay, what do we do in our home? There's so much we can do in our home to help in this effort. And now there's let's take these cookies and walk them down the street, because right there they're collecting the cookies, and then they're going to take them off to the Chayalim. So why don't you come with me, and we're going together as a family. So very, very slowly you're coaxing your child and trying to make it as much as possible, one friend, two friends, a more social experience. We don't want to throw our kids out here right now, because that'll just cause more trauma. We want to, holding their hands at the beginning, slowly push them a little bit in the direction of taking of empowerment. I can do something for everyone around me. I can make cookies. Cookies is amazing. And then from there, I can do something else. And the more we empower them to do, the more their anxiety hopefully is going to start to drop.
Okay. I do want to go over just one of the the terms that we're using of PTSD, because maybe some people don't really understand exactly what PTSD is, which is post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yes.
Um, Post-traumatic stress disorder is when you go through a traumatic situation at a particular time, but only later, when something triggers your brain to think that it was going back to its original trauma. So when a person is, for instance, the one of the greatest examples is a soldier that fought in Iraq, the first Iraq War, and this is a factual story. A number of years later, after he went through his therapy and dealing with the wars that he went through, he was walking through New York with his wife in New York City, and all of a sudden a car backfired. And sometimes if you remember the old days, they had these cars that the mufflers would go boom. And this former soldier at that point, probably in his 30s at that point, jumped behind another car and went down on the ground. And when they finally figured out and got him out of his shock and out of his this place that he was in, he thought the mortars were falling.
Oh, poor guy.
He,
Yeah.
he really, it felt to him as he was back in Iraq and the mortars were falling and he was back in a war zone just from that one car backfire. So post-traumatic stress disorder is very similar to any child or any person who went through some kind of car accident, God forbid, and you hear a screech, you could automatically feel like I'm going to be in that car accident once again. So it's going back and making you feel as if you were back in the original trauma. So here we're talking about with children where when the sirens go off, it's very traumatic. I know for me, back in 2014, the first when first time the missiles sirens came off in Beit Shemesh. That's the first time the Beit Shemesh heard the actual sirens. And a few months later, we were in the States. I was in the States with my kids, and my sister. I was in my sister's house. I'll never forget. And back in New York, the fire department, when there's a fire or an emergency, this big siren goes off. And I'm sitting in my sister's kitchen, and this big siren goes off, and it sounded so much like the air raid siren. I jumped. I completely from that point, I learned how to control myself and be, and every time I go back to the States since then, I know that there's a siren that's going to go off. Breathe, and do your thing, because the first time you hear it, your body insides jump as if there's something was happening now. So what we're trying to do is help the children, especially the preteen, the younger age kids, deal with that situation later in life. Because right now, everybody's in a sense is doing things, or davening, and somehow trying to make themselves as best useful as they possibly can in the time that they can. But in a few months' time from now, when things calm down, there could be a moment in time where just something triggers their brain to the air raid sirens going off. because there's a missile coming overhead when there's no missile coming overhead. So the kids might jump. So I think what we're trying to do is get the kids more involved now and be able to talk to. So when the moment comes later on, they have somebody that they can share their feelings with, someone that they can not hold it in and feel like they're alone in their, dealing with their trauma. So by being more active now, being more proactive, I should say, whether it's volunteering, going for the exercise and for the run, I think that's what you're saying, is that
And the communication, that's a really
stuff like
central.
that. The more you do now, the less chance that things will develop later on into a real PTSD level where the child can actually flip out and freak out to where they think that they're going through it again. I hope
Well
I made.
said. Very good. Okay.
So if anybody does have any more questions, please feel free to put in the Q&A. If you actually want to speak live, you can raise your hand and we can unmute you. So that can definitely work out as well. If you have any specific questions that you would like to ask. No, because you were saying, with yourself in a sense, when you were doing the Taharas. And I know back when I was back in Queens, I used to Chevra Kadisha. And I used to go out and sometimes get calls in the middle of the night that I had to go perform a Tahara. It's a lot different for what, most of the Taharas that I did. Yes, I had a couple of car accidents that I had to deal with. But for the most part, I dealt mainly with older people,
Right.
and understanding and stuff like that. So with your volunteerism, okay, I mean, I think this can be used also as an example for when the kids, with their volunteerism, some things that they're going to be doing, whether it's packing meals. Here in Big Shemesh, you have Ezra Tachib packs meals for families. They do that very nicely. Or they're packaging tzitzis or something for the soldiers. There's still a sense when you're volunteering, even though you're doing something positive, it's for a negative purpose, in a sense, in a negative surroundings. Even though when you're doing the Tahara, unfortunately, it's because somebody died. We're packaging a meal for a family because unfortunately they were displaced because of the war, and it's very sad that they have to be displaced. We're packaging tzitzis for a soldier because he's out in war and he's, and that's his protection.
Right.
That a lot of these soldiers, Baruch Hashem, they're all asking for tzitzis and tefillin and different things because they feel that that's protecting them, during these circumstances. So we're doing things positive, but when the kids sometimes think about it, I'm doing it because of a negative reason. So how do we can get them to talk about being proactive and being happy to do something for someone when that person that you're doing it for is in a negative situation?
Okay, excellent. And that's the nature of chesed. So basically that would be every circumstance. So giving Meiser, that's because there are poor people. And inviting people, let's say, that just moved to a neighborhood for a Shabbos meal because they're new and they don't know people. So basically what I'm trying to say is that when we normalize doing things for other people, so right now it's like helping people on crack. That's my own expression. So let's say, it's like, wow, we're doing a lot of helping. But when we help people out, it's because we are always in a dynamic situation where we have to give and we have to receive. And that's part of life when we have, and therefore, when we could normalize it to our children and say, when we invite someone for Shabbos, it's a chesed, and we gain so much from it because we meet a new family and we feel good about ourselves, and it strengthens them and us together. doing the taharas, making the meals. It's not taharas in this case, it was hachanot. So making those meals, or the other thing is that at this point, those people need our help. And at a different point, we might need their help. So let's say we're helping someone after they have a baby. So they're in a struggling time, but they had a baby. So every challenging situation not only brings the opportunity for others to help, but it also is always going to move along, and then they're going to be in a better situation afterwards. So I think we have to normalize that and not let kids focus on, that's not the issue, but helping to empower them to see it as every single chesed we do is for someone who needs something from us now, and we can do it because we have the strength and we have the skill to do that right now. And then they're going to have people who do things for us because they will have the strength and ability to do it for us when we need it. And that's what makes us a very strong, vibrant, beautiful community.
Very
And
nice.
that's part of life.
Okay. That was a very good answer. Thank you.
My pleasure.
So we have a question that just came in. So what about the opposite reaction from a child, 9-year-old boy, let's say, when they
Okay.
show lots of interest and want to know about or see the war, see what's going on in the war efforts? As parents, of course, we don't want to expose them to anything that will cause them long-term damage, but also don't want to shut down their interest. So I guess if they
Excellent
want to see what,
question. No, and I hear that because we're talking, that would be like my kids. They want to know everything and they're interested in everything and all that stuff. And yes, we need to answer their questions, and we need to allow them to ask as many questions as possible, and we need to complement their need to know, their curiosity, because we have it too. That's why we're sitting on the news all the time. So we need to let them know that that's a good part of them, that they're curious about it, and that it should never be shamed. But we also need to let them know as adults that we ourselves are not looking at images. We ourselves are not reading difficult stories because it doesn't help with bringing, those people can't be brought back. It doesn't help bring to peace. It doesn't help our chayalim fight better. It doesn't give us strength. It just brings us down and makes us sad. So there are things that we can talk about. So I was recently on an interview with Carolyn Glick. You could link to that if you want. I don't know if you have that. But I could, and there I did talk about more challenging things, because she needed a kind of testimony, because there's so many people are saying, like, literally Holocaust survivor, denial, like a minute after we had this horrifying event. So she asked for the testimony. So some of my children wanted to watch it and listen, and some just really just didn't. And I felt like I wanted to encourage both sides, because you can listen to something, you can hear someone telling a testimonial, but visuals are what's most damaging. So your child's interested in listening to the news, interested in hearing what's happening, do it with them. Help them experience it with you. Do not, no matter what, allow them to see the images. Do not allow yourself to see the images. So curiosity is so important, but draw a very clear line and explain to your child that it literally just sinks right into your neshama and sits there. And no Jewish neshama needs to have that. But yes, you can allow your child to discuss anything that they need to discuss.
so just along that line, I mean, I know one of the answers a child can give you says, well, they're showing the images in the UN, they're showing the images in all these places and showing it for all these, to people to see. I think much more in line what you're saying is they're showing it to people who don't necessarily believe that something like this could have happened.
Right. It's not for
We
us.
It's not for us because we know it happened. We don't have to believe it happened. We know it's true.
Right.
We know it's because we're not just, we're 1 or 2 steps away from knowing somebody that it happened to. So I don't think, we don't have to see it to believe it. We know it's true.
Right.
They need to see it to believe it, because then they think that we're just talking. We just have to let them, they have to see
Right.
these
And
things.
we don't need that testimony. And frankly, I don't know that all of us need to be going to Auschwitz. Um, that's there, and it's for and people do choose to go, and that's fine. But is that a rite of passage? Absolutely not. It's not for us. We know we're here, we've got this, and we need to move forward with it.
Okay. Thank you so much, Abigail. I know you are, your time constraints, and I thank you so much for being here with us
I'm just
tonight.
heading to the airport because Baruch Hashem, we got a full shipment of vests. So
Yep.
heading out there. I do want to say that here, this is my book, HyperHealing. And it has a lot of chapters that address this, the trauma and stress that our children are going through. There is one more topic that I wanted to discuss, which is a very structured way of helping our children, guiding the parents to guide children in a conversation that really brings out their emotions in a very safe and very effective way. It's called collaborative problem solving, and it's something that I highly recommend. So if you want to take a look at that, obviously I could not cover everything in a 1 hour conversation, but there are a tremendous amount of resources specifically for our children in these age groups that are going through a very, very hard time. And I will conclude, just from my part at least, by first of all thanking you for being here, and just a bracha and a tefillah that we all get through this with a tremendous amount of achdut, a tremendous amount of growth, and that let the good times rain upon us. Hashem, just let it come ad lidai, and we're waiting for it and davening.
Yes. Thank you again, Abigail. It has been a pleasure. As usual, it's always a pleasure. And Bezat Shem, maybe hopefully we'll be able to do this again, just on a lighter note, and not
Yes.
not such a heavy situation. Again, I also like to thank Epic Families for co-hosting us tonight. And again, if anybody needs to contact me, please contact me. To get Abigail's books, you can send us an email, and we can definitely get you in touch and get you a copy of the book. We still have a couple more
Oh, do you?
copies, but yes, I do.
I actually would say, if anyone has a direct question for me, then I think you put up my website that you can get directly in touch with me through my website, and I'm always happy to hear from people and answer any questions.
Excellent. Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much, and good luck in getting that shipment.
Amen. Thank you. Take care.
Okay. Thank
Bye-bye.
you, everybody.